Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Not hungry going into this week's show. I had a bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios before I came on, but I'm so spent all the same. I just finished soloing the Palace of the Dead, Floor 200. VOD's going to be up on YouTube probably in the next day, probably around the time that you actually see this. And, oh my god, it's such a freaking relief. I actually got to the point, and I'll explain this in those videos as well, where I didn't even want the title. I just didn't. I legitimately just started. I started starting on floor 51 because I was like, I have world class troller. I have the best title in the game. I'm never gonna take this title off. I'm done title hunting. I just wanted to beat those last 20 floors because Palace of the Dead is so boring until you get to like 171 plus. And even 171 to 179 isn't that exciting. It's like 180 where it really starts to kick off. So I didn't get Necromancer. I just wanted to beat floor 200 solo at this point. And it's a hell of a lucky run. Let me tell you, because I screw up royally on the successful run, but the world it saw a way. And I took that way. So enjoy that when it's up, but I didn't get Necromancer, so maybe I have to go back and... Nah. But anyway, I got raid tonight, and I am still absolutely exhausted. I'd like to rest a little bit now that my brain power has reached maximum. So I'm going to sip on my water, what's left of my coffee, and let's answer some questions. Thank you to our sponsors over on Patreon for supporting. They don't get anything extra. All my channel's content is posted for free here for everyone to enjoy. But I want to thank them for being over there, because they don't have to be, but they are, and I appreciate you. Our patrons of darkness, Khuja, Cross on Jenova, and Kurenai Oni, who have gone above and beyond in their support on that platform. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of our patrons. And thank you to you for tuning in. With that, let's see what questions are on last week's episode, shall we? All right, question number 1. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello. Hi. I've read a few things discussing this, but wanted to ask what your best approach is to obtaining gear for running old ultimates like Ukab and Uwu. Do you recommend just using level 80 gear or choosing a set that matches the tier? So this depends on your role. Tanks and healers generally want gear that's of that level because otherwise they can't have any direct hit. And I know, you don't think, oh, those roles don't need direct hit, but we use direct hit on those rolls. So if you actually need the materia slots for anything, if you're on a roll that needs them, then you're definitely going to want to make sure that you go and get that old gear. That can also be useful on jobs that need specific skill speed or spell speed tiers, because otherwise you're going to be just playing to hoping that your skill speed or your spell speed works out to be exactly the same. Most of the time it does, but why take the chance? You know what I mean? So I'd say, yeah, it depends on the role. Otherwise, there are some things you can do that are quite useful. One of them, for example, the Shadowbringer's resistance weapon. If you put 280 stats on every stat, you can actually get max stats inside of Ukab, because that's what the item level would allow. So it'll actually allow you to have 280 of every substat that the resistance weapon can possibly have. As for Uwu, I don't think you can hit that. I don't remember what the number is. And then I'd imagine that you'd want to cap 3 of them and then have the last one. So the respecking is pretty important there. But honestly, we outscale them so much that unless you have a very particular need, like a healer or a tank, like I mentioned earlier, I would just go with what you have. Most of it's going to stat cap down to such like a strong level, plus with all the job changes, that you're just going to be overpowered in there with or without putting that much effort into it. So tank or healer, get the old sets. Otherwise, I think they'll be fine. All right, question number 2. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Hello, good evening, morning, midnight for you. Welcome, enjoy. 2 questions to pick your brain. Sure, will monks ever get a ranged attack to pull single targets in solo play? I mean, you have Feint. No, but seriously, I don't think they should get a ranged attack like Piercing Talon. Honestly, I hate that those even exist. It's such a waste of a skill slot, in my opinion. But at the same time, with the skill slots you actually use, those are already kind of bloated. So it just feels like it's there unnecessarily, and I don't think it needs to be replaced by anything. In the case of Monk, if they're going to give them a ranged attack, it really needs to be like a 30-second OGCD that you would use in your normal rotation, but it just happens to have a range. So most Final Fantasy XI players will say Chi attack, just because that was what they had in 11. And yeah, that would work, like 30 seconds, does some damage, maybe it has some extra effect, who knows, but that's about all I would really accept for Monk. Or making Enlightenment a slightly lower level, maybe increase its range. That would also, I think, be an acceptable way of doing it. 2, for the new job starting below level cap, Reaper and Sage. Is the starting gear equal or weaker than, say, Crafter or Poetics? So I think it's 15 item levels under the raid gear. So what is that? What's our 535 right now? So if pattern keeps, I think it'll be item level 515, but I don't know if that has HQ stats on it or not. What I will say is that upgraded Revelation gear currently, or Savage gear right now, should be stronger than it. And on top of that, after the expansion comes out, you can spend Poetics to get that gear instead of having to use Revelation like you are now. So my advice would be, get whatever Revelation gear you can get now for Reaper and or Sage, and upgrade it with weekly stuff, with hunts, whatever you can actually get. And whatever you don't have, after the expansion releases, save up 2,000 Poetics, save up your Allegory and your Revelation so you can also convert it to Poetics, and then just buy the augmented stuff that releases at that point. Because by then it's just going to cost Poetics to buy it anyway. So that would be my recommendation. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, hey, hope you're having a great week. I sure am. Sorry in advance if this has been asked. Even if it has, I'm used to this. You know, I get asked the same question all the time. I'm never worried about it. My question is on the first rating tier of Endwalker. I believe they stated that this will be released on the week of Christmas. Yes, so the way that our raid releases work is the expansion comes out, in this case on November 23rd. 2 weeks later, the normal mode raid tier will release, and 2 weeks after that, so 4 weeks total, will be the Savage raid tier. That happens to fall on the week of Christmas. Curious what your opinion is of raid tier being released during a holiday. I think I'm the wrong person to ask, because there's a lot of people who have families, have plans, like the holidays. I'm kind of neutral. It's just another kind of week for me. I'm not humbug, but I'm not like jovial, if that makes sense. Especially because that's right around my birthday, so I've always kind of just joined them together, and I don't really treat my birthday very specially either. So, I don't think this has happened with a major... all the major expansion releases have been in the middle of the summer previously. The closest we had, I think, was July 4th for the actual release of the expansion, but not for the raid tier. I'm sure there's raid tiers that have lined up with like New Year's or some other holiday, but nothing ever this close. But they said they're keeping to the plan. So I'm going to plan around that and hope for the best. And I do kind of hope they realize it's probably not the best idea in the future, especially with the way the new delayed schedule is after everything that's happened in the last couple of years. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But in my opinion, they shouldn't do it. It just... I'm less upset about it because it doesn't affect me as personally. So again, I feel like I'm kind of just the wrong person to ask about it. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, how you doing? I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. Endwalker will be my first time experiencing an expansion day one. I'm so tired, I apologize. What are some things that you do while preparing for a new expansion, both in-game and IRL? So I think IRL, preparation is more important for an expansion than in-game preparation. Yes, you want to get that job leveled super quick, you want to log out in the right spot, and those are things you should absolutely do. But the biggest thing that gets neglected, I feel, when big game launches happen in general is people's health. And you can enjoy a game better when you don't feel like crap, in my own personal opinion. So, either buying lots of prepared foods if you're not much of a cooker, making sure there's a decent mix of proteins, vegetables, or whatever your dietary needs are, I suppose. Have some healthier snacks. Don't just get chips and stuff. Get like cashews or dried fruit or something like that. Something that just isn't going to drain you when you're playing. Lots of water bottles, or a big like flask full of like ice and water is probably a good idea. And then for me, of course, tons and tons of coffee. I make coffee on the daily during that time, and I do also buy some store-bought ones, which I don't like, but sometimes you just need a hit. That's just the way that I feel about it. And then it's just about doing anything you would do to stay healthy, but preparing it in advance. Even if it's little things like also making sure you don't forget, dental hygiene, for example. Make sure you have, a toothbrush and toothpaste that is full. Have a nice full thing of toothpaste. Get some like Listerine or some shit, whatever it is you got to do. Just don't neglect yourself is the key thing. Because if you feel like shit, you're going to have a bad time, in my opinion. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Mr. Happy. Hope you're doing well. Hope the same for you. Long-time watcher since I first started this game 2 years ago, but first-time asker. Welcome, and let's see what you got for me. It's a bit of a read, it looks like, but not too bad. My question is about helping people to improve. Recently, my static began progging E12S after having cleared the rest of the tier, and it's become very obvious that 2 members in our group are struggling, especially our healer. While they may not be amazing on the jobs or even the roles they play, a quick look at XFE analysis on a re-clear shows they are making mistakes that would be bad even in Duty Finder, like having a 60% GCD cast uptime, constant mismanaging of resources, and not using certain abilities at all over a fight. Notice that it a lot on our farm runs of E11, but now it's legitimately hurting our proc. I was wondering in what ways could I help them improve or suggestions I could make. Even after suggesting they go to XFE analysis and do some party finder runs, I'm finding it hard to come up with ways to help. So you've done your part, I'd say, on that big one. The only other thing that can really help at this point is calling for abilities to be used. I hate it. I hate when it has to come down to that. When you have to be like, Tactician, or, you know, Cure 3 spam, or... It's so ridiculous. But what it does is it at least gets their foot in the door to doing it themselves. And the hope is that you no longer need to do it after a while. But if there's anything I've learned in this game over the years, it's once people have somebody else or something else doing a portion of their thinking for them, unfortunately, I don't often see it lead to them then taking it as a means of improvement. Like, they don't, like, then go, okay, it's repeating in my head over and over, so now I get it. Like, I'm definitely going to do that every time there. Okay. But sometimes it does, so that's about it. But what you suggested for them to do is something I would normally suggest for them to do as well. But they just have to take that extra leap. It sounds like they're just really scared and nervous and anxious the whole time. And that comes with inexperience, so it could just be something that levels itself out over time, but there's no way to know in advance. So it's a tough one, but what you've suggested and maybe calling out for certain things when you know that it needs to be there. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, good sir. Hope you're doing well. I got 2 questions, if that's okay. A-okay with me. Given your reaction to the Final Fantasy 3 3D questions, what are the chances of seeing a playthrough? You know, I uploaded a ton of Final Fantasy related. Did I not upload Final Fantasy 3 3D when I played through it? Let me check real quick. Because I thought I uploaded, like, all of my count up. See, that's the thing. It'd be called count up on my channel if I uploaded the actual playthrough. But what I might have done is I might have only uploaded my thoughts video on it instead of uploading that. Final Fantasy 6, Final Fantasy 4 PSP, Final Fantasy 3 Steam. Yeah, no, I did upload it. So it is there. I guess I should, I don't know, maybe change the titles around or something. But yeah, my Final Fantasy 3 3D, my first one ever of Final Fantasy 3 3D, is on YouTube. And it is as negative as my feelings are on it now, let me tell you. Let's see. If a person was looking to get a group to start doing higher level content, what are some things you would advise to make the initial progress smoother? Don't be offended when somebody tells you need to improve. Going back on that previous question, one of the toughest things about that situation is doing it with any sort of finesse. Is trying to tell someone that they need to improve on a specific aspect, because there's so many different people, so many different personalities, and so many different ways of approaching a situation that needs to be improved. But people need to be open to some form of criticism, especially if they're going into high-end content for the first time. And the problem is that you're saying a group to start doing higher-level content. I am interpreting that as people who don't already do it. So I could also just be misinterpreting what you're actually saying. But that's a big thing. People need to be on the same page. They need to understand that this is not hardcore prog. You're not world firsting. It's a casual raid group that is trying to approach content for the first time. If anyone doesn't like that philosophy in the group or can't vibe with it, it's going to be detrimental, massively detrimental to the group, both in their morale and in the likelihood of them staying together. They also need to be about the same skill level, unless somebody who is of a greater skill level wants to stick around regardless because they're having fun. Making sure that if people are making mistakes, that it's a lot of people making the same kind of mistakes. It's easier to laugh off. It's easier to get through mentally when you don't feel like you're the only one screwing things up. So it just helps everyone kind of take those little baby steps along. And eventually there's usually some differences. People pick things up faster or slower than each other, but that's really important that everyone has a similar skill level and a similar mindset, because it just makes it so that no matter how long the progression takes, people are having fun. And if you can't have fun, then what's the point? Sorry, for the whole last question, I was rubbing my foot against, my foot itched. I was rubbing it against this, against my cabinet right here. Sorry if that was picking up on the mic. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Happy. Hope you're doing. I'm still doing it, by the way. Hope you're doing all right. You doing all right? I hope you do. I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing alright. My question is about blue progression in the future. Ever since it was released in 4.5, we've had 2 major updates, including a higher level cap new spell. Since there's a gap of 2 or 3 patches between each update, one could imagine that there will be 2 more updates in Endwalker. However, that would also mean that if they kept the rhythm, we would reach the same level cap, which will obviously not happen. That could mean less updates, less content, or different kinds of updates. Unless, of course, they change it to no longer be a limited job, which would open up a completely different can of worms, which they also wouldn't do in the middle of an expansion. After Ninja, we'll probably never see them do something like that again. I don't think the devs will regulate this. I think the best answer is to release more content for Blue Mage without giving them more spells. I've been saying for the longest time. Now, I mentioned at the beginning I was doing Palace of the Dead before this. For the longest time I've said, Blue Mage should be able to do Palace of the Dead or Heaven on High. But it needs to be a Blue Mage specific version of it where they start with just Water Cannon on the bottom and they need to learn spells from the monsters as they go throughout. So if they see level 5 Death or if they see like a primal spell, and then maybe you can pick up spells in chests too, like rare spells in chests that you can use that are more powerful. Because obviously they don't have Titan or Susano in there, and they probably aren't going to put them in there just for the sake of that. Maybe there could be like rooms that are like rooms of learning where you go in there and you fight all the monsters, and then the book in the center activates, and by looking at the book you can learn a more powerful spell. There's room to do content like that if they're willing to do it. And if you just offer a good challenge, some tomes, some seals, and probably some very exclusive rewards like you see with Palace of the Dead, then you'll probably draw a well enough interest into it. And I just think it's a lost potential at this point. So I'd like to see a level cap increase for Blue Mage, more mass carnivals, and then some sort of Blue Mage unique content. If they don't do that, then the other thing I would suspect they would do is release another limited job. And quite frankly, I don't think Blue Mage has done well enough for them to do that. So that's kind of low on my prediction list. All right, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Haps. I hope you have a good day. I hope the same for you. Since this will be tomorrow, I'm going to hope that your Monday is good. Recently, I've heard from someone that if you're playing healer and you don't like the pace your tank is going in a dungeon, you should swap from healer to tank. I don't understand why someone could think like this. My main is paladin. If I see the healer can't manage during big pulls, I'm backing off. It just seems natural to do so, but after such opinions, I'm wondering if I'm doing the right thing. So a lot of people like to say the tank sets the pace for the dungeon. It's not true. What the truth is the combination of the tank and the healer set the pace. Because if the tank wants to go fast and the healer can't keep up, you can't do it. If the healer wants to go fast but the tank doesn't want to, you can't do it. Yes, the healer could be a dickhead and go ahead and pull more monsters, but don't be that person because you're an asshole. So I'd say it's a group effort on that. And kind of the DPS also set that pace, because if the DPS are killing stuff really slow and tanks are running out of cooldowns on big pulls, that can really suck. So realistically, I still kind of agree with the tank sets the pace, but it's only if everyone else can keep up. So I'd say that you have not been going about it the wrong way. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Hey, Haps. Hope you're doing all right. I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I'd like to ask you about your opinion on Red Mage, specifically min-maxing its damage output. I'd like to precede this by saying I am not a Red Mage expert. You should probably check out the Balanced Discord. I always hear that Red Mage is by far the easiest DPS job. I'm curious if it's easy to start or easy overall. Red Mage is one of the easiest jobs to start playing and to start progressing raids in. You're incredibly versatile in terms of what you're capable of doing, especially with your combat res. You have some built-in mobility that's easy to access, even if it's not quite the same as being able to run all over the place. And just your damage rotation is very, very simple on Red Mage. It's one of the stronger things about the job. And it doesn't underperform. There's this weird thing where people believe that because it has the combat reses, it is also weak. It is not. That job has gotten significant buffs throughout the expansion, and I don't like that perception of it. I just don't personally like playing the job. It's just not exciting to me. I find it boring. So that's the only thing I don't like about it, is my own personal opinion that it's not fun to play. But in terms of its effectiveness, it's great, and I think it's a great option for learning caster the first time around. There are some things you need to pick up. If you've watched my caster starting video, this looks like this was asked maybe the same day or the day before. I would definitely give that a look, because it mentioned some of Red Mage's considerations with their mobility, and also, by the way, Embolden sucks. I'll let you know that. I don't like Embolden. Maybe I should stop using my opinions. Embolden's weird. Please change it, Square Enix. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps. Hope you are doing well. Quick question, promise. Just want to ask what Filipino food you've tasted, eaten, and so far what's your favorite? I mean, the classics, obviously. Pancit, lumpia, chicken adobo. Now, the problem is, I'm sure I've had so much more than that, but those three things... Bro, every time I went to a party, a family party for one of my friends, I would wait for the trays. Those three trays. If there's chicken adobo, pancit, and lumpia, I am standing there the entire time. And I dated a lot of Filipino women when I was younger. So I was at a lot of family parties. And all the families would always look at me and be like, yes, eat. And then I would just go ham. give me that sweet chili sauce. Give me the lumpia. I've had everything that could possibly be at a Filipino family party. But I can't remember the names of everything. So, sorry. But we'll go with my big three for the time being. Hashtag Senor Happy. Why don't you start in one language? I guess because I couldn't say it last week, right? What's Papa's Happy? Long-time watcher, like third-time asker? Yeah, something like that. Enjoy a bigger Ozma mount. A Demier Ozma? Why not a Demi-Ozma-er? Never mind, you're right. Listening to your rant about why you don't like Final Fantasy 3 3D was really funny, despite the fact it might not have been enjoyable in the moment. Have you considered making videos about similar, lighthearted reasons why you don't like X or Y versus its remake, etc.? I'm not sure how often you get that worked up about stuff. Bro, there are some games I get really worked up about. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is another one I despise. I 100%ed the base version of that game. And I won't judge Torna. I've heard really good things about Torna, even from people who agree with me on Xenoblade Chronicles 2's base game. But I have very, very similar feelings about Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Chrono Cross, I played Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross both for the first time back-to-back, like 5 years ago. And after being like, oh my god, how could I have just not possibly have played this? Oh my god, it's great. And then I played Chrono Cross, and I was like, this franchise burned for a reason. This franchise burned for a very good reason. So yeah, I mean, maybe, but sometimes I like to have fits of negativity. But sometimes I don't want to. So it's just sometimes just exhausting to try to like point out the flaws that you find in something, because there's also somebody out there who's gonna fight with you about why it's great, and it's not. It's energy I don't want to spend. So I won't say no, but I'll say unlikely. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Hello. Hope things are going well, and thanks for answering my previous questions. No problem, and hello to you too. In Final Fantasy XIV, there are many quests and storylines that one can do, which have all sorts of varying themes, purposes, or character involvements. Which of these quest storylines do you happen to consider your personal favorites? Let me give you a hint. Unfortunately, the camera frame doesn't capture it well enough, but Hildebrand's one of my big favorites. I'm never memeing when I say that. I genuinely enjoy those quest lines. It's just such a different kind of thing than you expect in an MMO. I love it. I absolutely love it. That's probably my biggest one. I will also say the Warring Triad, and subsequently now the Void Quests, has also been kind of a personal favorite over the years. They tied together really well, and I'm hoping to see more from those in the future. But yeah, Warring Triad and Hildebrand, those are two of my favorite ones for sure. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. How you doing, Haps? That's an acceptable hello. I'll take it. Long time watcher, first time asker. Welcome. Eden's Promise was my first ever Savage tier, and I had a blast. It took me about 6 weeks to complete the tier, and the Party Finder with 12 taking the longest. I hate Line Lions. I finished the tier purple and since dipped my toes into Ultimate, close to my first T clear. Nice. I'm looking forward to Pandemonium Statics. I'm looking for Pandemonium Statics, but most of the folks I know on Ether already have groups. I really want to try my hand at Dragonsong War on release, but I'm not sure what to anticipate in terms of my timeline to get this without a static in time for 6.1. What are your thoughts? Will I have time to get geared? Oh yeah, Party Finder, even if you just do Party Finder, the only place you have to worry about whether or not you'll have your gear in time is E12. And I'll also be honest with you about one thing. If you're looking for a static for 6.1 Dragonsong War, if you're missing a couple of pieces, there's a good chance that they'll be down to, do a few clears of it to make sure that you get the exact pieces, because you got to remember, we get coffers now. Like, yeah, there's books, but by that close to Dragonsong War, I mean, we have coffers, so they can literally just for 2 weeks pass a weapon coffer and a body coffer and caught up. And P1 through 3, you probably won't have any issues with the Party Finder either. So I don't think, because it's the first raid tier, it's usually the easiest raid tier. It's usually the easiest one to Party Finder. And even if you don't, you will need very few pieces that a group that you actually join late could even just funnel all those pieces into you in the last week or two. I don't think you'll have any issues. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps. Hope you're doing well. Hope the same for you as well. Have you ever discussed doing additional changes to your companion? I realize they can't be used for a lot of content, making it less of a priority, but it tends to drop off fairly quickly on its utility since its DPS is lackluster. It can't hold aggro, which tends to lead them down to soft healers. It also just feels like something that was maybe useful a long time ago, but the game has changed. I will say their healing aspects are pretty strong even in the open world. I'm rarely ever disappointed, but I will say you actually got to make sure you don't take Choco Medica because it messes with their AI significantly, and it actually reduces their effectiveness overall. So there is that as well. As for changes, no. Like you've said, it's such a low priority because it's just not important to the whole game. There was a time a long time ago where they mentioned maybe making our Magitech armor a companion, but they've since abandoned it because it just doesn't serve a purpose. So it's really hard to want to do that at all. I don't know what else to say about it. So I wouldn't expect any changes that are significant, but you never know. Maybe they just got something in the back pocket to completely rework it and make it amazing. I just wouldn't bank on it. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Happy. Thank you for the answer last week. Have another question for you. I hope I'm not too... Whoa, 3 minutes ago this was asked. Yo, you made it, just so you know. Should I be worried about someone who's never potentially healed unlocking one at level 70 with Sage, or am I just being silly? Shadowbringers did come with a level 60 tank, and the world didn't end. Do we need something like a level 70 healer to unlock Sage, or 60 tank to unlock Gunbreaker, just to make sure they get practice with the role? So I'm not entirely against that idea, but I have a philosophy when it comes to performance in Final Fantasy XIV, but really in almost anything. People who are not conductive to a specific playstyle when they pick something up are innately not going to do well on it. It wouldn't matter even if they had played the other healers before. They're going to pick up Sage and they're going to have a bunch of shiny new tools, and it's probably going to be overwhelming to them regardless. On the other hand, you have people who never play a role, but they understand how it works. You know, they've played around people and they see a lot of people who play it, and they get it. You know what I mean? Now, like you said with Gunbreaker, world didn't end. Same will be with Sage. World probably won't end. You will definitely run into people who do not know how the job works or do not take enough time to figure it out. But it's rarely that impactful on the grand scheme of like Duty Finder and grouping up and stuff like that. Or at least historically it's been that way. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. G'day, mate. How's it up there in the Americas? As terrible as it always is. Hopefully you're having a good one. My question is, I'm playing through all of the Final Fantasy games 1 to 15 due to the Pixel remasters. Make sure you wait for 4, 5, and 6 on that one. Should I play and finish Final Fantasy 11? Is there a good story? Am I missing anything? So yeah, Final Fantasy 11, most of the stories are pretty good. Of course, there's no voice acting, so it's very text heavy. But if you're used to playing the old Final Fantasies, you're kind of used to that, but it's way more text than that. Way more text. My personal opinion, the starting story, kind of it's a nice introduction to the game, but in the grand scheme of things, super underwhelming. The individual city-states after you get past a certain point, I like one of them. I like Windurst. I'm not big on the Sandoria one, and the what's it called, Bastok one. Also, take it or leave it. I like the characters, but I think the Windurst one really takes it home. Rise of Xylart, not a great story. It has a really good intro cutscene, a kind of one okay middle cutscene, and one okay end cutscene. But honestly, it's so much fluff and barely any what's it called, substance, that I don't really like Rise of Xylart. What it does do is it gives you background for Chains of Promethea, which is easily one of that game's best stories. Treasures, I'm not a big fan of Treasures. It has its moments, especially towards the end, but I know a lot of people really love the Treasures of Aht Urhgan story. Wings I have a tumultuous history with because of the way it launched. It was around the time I finally quit Final Fantasy XI when they started raising the level cap the first time. It's fine. I think the Wings of the Goddess story is fine, but the pacing and the methodology with which you have to actually unlock the story quests, that's not good. It's super underwhelming the way they decide to do it, and it's one of the worst aged stories because of it, in my opinion. Seeker's great. You can tell the budget's not as high for it, but Seeker's story, fantastic. Rhapsody's really a love letter to the people who played the whole time, but as you play through the stories, you kind of gain an appreciation for Rhapsody's, even if you weren't around all those years ago. And Voracious, the newest story, is not done yet, and it will be done in May of 2020, or May of 2022, sorry. It started in May of 2020, but it's, I don't know, I haven't kept up with it. I kept up with the early sections, but not with the most recent ones, so I still have some story catching up to do. There's a lot of other little side stories and stuff in there like you'd expect in an MMO, but it's worth the struggle, as long as it only takes you like a month or two to get through everything. But it's a time. It's a time. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Haps. Heard you mentioning... Hi, by the way. Heard you mention studying level design and made me wonder what made you think of 14's dungeon design. So let me be very clear when I say dungeon design. I do mean the physical layout of the dungeon itself. Not the individual artistic assets, but the actual programming, the highest... The bottom level, like the stuff that's underneath. That's what I was really focusing on when I was going into college. So I'd be the person making collisions and determining the pathways and meeting demands that the art team needs me to, giving it a little bit of personality with, is it a cavern? Is it a tower? Those are the kind of things, not like where the monsters are placed or what the monsters do. That's a personal interest, but that's not something that you can really study so much in college, at the very least. That's something that kind of like comes with trial and error and QA and experience. One thing that rubs me a bit is how Square Enix is plainly willing to give trash simple mechanics like gremlins and Holminster or enemies that charge at random players, but only does so rarely. Why are packs that do nothing but auto and maybe basic AoE the tank the norm? Because dungeons are designed to be a lowest common denominator content. They are meant so that anyone can hop into them, do them once, whether it be for a roulette or just they have enough time to do a single dungeon, and they walk away with a meaningful reward, something that keeps them subscribed, something that keeps them interested. It's also a vessel for telling the story of that area, whether it be some sort of groundbreaking, game-ending, massive revelation, or just making a giant pork scene. You know what I mean? So that's why. It doesn't serve to challenge the player. It serves to reward them for their time, or reward them with advancement of a plotline, story, or the world in some way. I don't necessarily agree with that decision all the way, but given the other contents we have in the game, I rarely find myself actually complaining about dungeons. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Good day to you, fine sir. Good day to you as well. My question is about job gauges and dot management, specifically bard dots. Why isn't dot uptime made more prominent as part of the job gauge, since it's such an important part of the job mechanics? I can't tell you how many times I've accidentally let them fall off because I'm not looking at the debuffs often enough. This has been a long time request, by the way. Bards have been asking for their dots on the job gauge for a long time. You're not alone. And considering they are so important, I do agree with you. It feels like giving them a countdown bar or something as part of the job gauge would be very helpful. No, you're not crazy. Trust me, this is a very common thing. This is one of the reasons why Bard has gotten so many complaints from ranged physical players. The job feels out of date. Stormblood Bard is great, and Shadowbringer's Bard is just slightly updated Stormblood Bard. They gave them Apex Arrow, which isn't that fun. They fixed a few of their gameplay mechanics, took away their crit scaling a decent bit, and fixed up some of the weaknesses of the original design. But they didn't actually modernize it like they did with a lot of jobs in Shadowbringers. They don't have charges for things like Bloodletter. Their dots aren't on their gauge, even though they're considered super important interactions that you actually have. You do see when your dots tick if you get a proc. It strums the thing. That's about it, but it doesn't actually do anything to track what dots you actually have up or anything like that. It might be because there are targets, and you could dot multiple targets, and it's not going to track every individual target, and the job gauge isn't going to change depending on the target. So that might be the main reason why, but knowing that they're even up at all is not present there. So that's probably the reason why it ended up like that. I can't think of any other good reason, at the very least. All right, and I'm just going to lightning around a few questions. There were some I didn't have good answers to, and some that I don't know. I guess I didn't know how I was going to answer them. There's somebody asking about... They had an idea of how to convert blue to a full job. Idea questions are really tough for me because I don't really know. I don't make the game. So my thoughts on it, I personally don't find my own thoughts on it relevant. So it's hard for me to get invested in answering questions like that. It's a point that I bring up here in the weekly Q&A on occasion. Because we all have ideas. And I think it's sometimes interesting to shoot the shit with those ideas. Like, what if they did this with Puppet Master? Or, Blue Mage could be a full job if they did it like this. Or they could do multiple specs with the jobs that they did. And it's like, those are fun and all. But at the same time, there's a way the game is designed. There's a philosophy behind the game design. And while we have some glimpses into it, both from interviews or from just experience with the game, I always find it hard to get too super invested in those conversations when they don't seem within a realm of likelihood. They're not based on something that feels like it could happen, even if we are creating in our heads a way that it could. So I have a really hard time with questions like that. So there was one like that had a couple of replies that was just basically ends with thoughts, ? And that one I had a hard time getting. So I skipped past that one in the initial one. Then there was some people commenting on the little guy on the left. Some people commenting on the fan noise. It's been really, really hot in here, and my PC fan has been working overtime. So that's what that sound is, because my microphone is here and my PC is over here. It doesn't even need to be cleaned. It's just, I guess it's just hot in here. So it's running loud. I found it's been running louder the last couple of weeks, even though my PC temp is perfectly fine. Let's see, what else did we have? Oh, somebody asked me about the naming convention. Why is the 5.3 trial not named a Minstrel's Ballad? I don't remember how we unlock it. I assume it's the same way as the other Minstrel Ballads ones, just in the Shadowbringer zone to be the Minstreling Wanderer. And maybe that's why. But then also 5.1's is... I don't have a good answer. That was one I didn't have a good answer for because I didn't name it. So I don't know. Maybe they just decided the whole Minstrel's Ballad thing is like, it's kind of cool, but maybe they should just name Extreme, and it's probably a little easier. They might have just made that realization in 5.3. So you might not see any Minstrel's Ballad names from this point on, because it is a little confusing to the player when trying to convey the difficulty of the instance. Let's see, what else was there? Helping people to improve. Someone asked me to slow down reading. Yeah, I'm a fast talker. That's kind of hard to change. I don't always try to do it, but I do try to keep it in mind. But it's, unfortunately, when I'm in the heat of the moment, it's hard to remember whether or not I'm speaking too fast for other people. So, apologies. Someone asked me, I'm going to change my Patrons of Darkness to Patrons on the Moon. Twilight Patrons. There we go. And then somebody asked if Fandaniel's going to be Xenos Voidsent avatar. I don't think he's a Voidsent, so it'd be kind of weird. So I'm going to say no. That's what I just think that's going to be a no in my prediction. Let's see. What you and other creators use for your podcasts? I'm not sure what you mean by that. There's a few decent tools. There's one I want to get into using that's way better for getting my podcasts on all different platforms. Like mine uploads to Spotify, mine uploads to SoundCloud, mine uploads to like Google Play, to the ice, to like podcasts on the Apple Store, and then I upload it myself to YouTube. So there's it goes all over the place. But like you can even, if you really want to, what I've been doing up till now, and is not a good answer, it's kind of like the laziest way to do a podcast upload, is to send it to SoundCloud and then use the SoundCloud feature that it has to send it out to an RSS feed. It's way better to set up your own RSS feed. I was just getting super frustrated with it because the RSS feed I was trying to set up wasn't working, and I don't know why. So I just went over to SoundCloud. I'm like, I don't care. I don't want to mess with it anymore. Just take it. I don't care how few tags it has. I'll just tell people it's out there. They'll find it. So yeah, but I can't remember. There was this other podcast thing that I signed up for recently, and I was going to try to start transferring new episodes onto that, but I haven't yet. My brain has been all sorts of fried as of late. Let's see, what else was there? There's the Filipino food question. FC leadership is getting burnt out. Do you have any apps or websites that can help with planning events? Doesn't the Lodestone have something for planning events? Maybe the mobile app does. Yeah, there's the Final Fantasy XIV mobile app, not the password Square Enix one. That's the Final Fantasy XIV mobile app. It technically has scheduling and stuff, but I don't know how effective it is. I mean, you could just set up like a Google Calendar that people could participate in as well. But I don't lead very often, so I don't have anything too specific in mind. Maybe one of those two things will work, but you're going to have to try them both out, in all honesty. Do you think there'll be future nerfs to the Shadowbringers resistance weapons? Yeah, I think the 30-30 step, it's been nerfed already, I think. Has it? No, I don't think it has. That step I think will be nerfed, even though it's a one-time. I think the 20-20-20 step at the beginning is going to get nerfed. But all the rest of them, I think they're in a pretty okay spot. I think Delubrum Normal itself is going to get nerfed massively, or they're going to give it a giant Poetics reward to try and get people to go in it. Maybe even a daily bonus for doing... They're going to have to do something with Delubrum Normal, because it will die. There's no reason to do it if you're not doing that quest, and I don't think there's going to be enough people doing that quest. So they're going to have to create a reason. So that's another nerf that I expect will probably take place as well. Let's see. There's a question, a lore-related question, about the Ascians and their perception with Zodiark. They're tempered. The Ascians are tempered by Zodiark. You got to remember that. So they're always going to hold him in a very high reverence, even though they're the ones who created him. That's just the nature of summoning in general. So that's why the Ascians they bow down and act, so to speak, even though they are the ones who made him, because they're tempered. Emmett himself pretty much says that at one point. Let's see. Themes, purposes, side quests. Be ready for 6.1. I take breaks in between. I'm a Mount Hound and Endwalker. Are there any mounts you'd like to see? Yeah, where's my freaking Ultros mount? Somebody said the Blue Mage level 80 raid mount is going to be Ultros. They like bet me on that. And I'm like, I'd actually believe you. So I don't want to bet against that because I want that. And Ultros are a Chupan mount. I still call them Chupan Typhon. Those are 2 mounts I would definitely want to see. Giant Enkidu mount. That's a big one. Listen, I want giant... Oh, they can make that a Gil mount. 75 million Gil. Golden Enkidu. Giant chicken mount. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Don't care. They're both made of gold in this case, so we're going to go with that. As for the extreme trials, which seems to be the big one, I'm not going to say chickens, I promise. Mythical creatures. I mean, there's a lot of mythical creatures that you can go through. There's none in particular that I want to see. I was surprised it took them that long to do dragons. So I don't have a good answer for that one, unfortunately, because I can't think of anything off the top of my head. There's a question about the similarities between Xenos and Nail. So Nail is a very different kind of crazy. Nail is basically our Sephiroth stand-in in Final Fantasy XIV. That's why they're the leader of the 7th. They summon Meteor. There's even a scene in 1.0 where they do the little walk through the flames like in Nibelheim. So I don't really feel much of a similarity between the two. Xenos just has an erection for us. That's it. Nail didn't care about us. Nail just wanted to do what O Lord Bahamut said to do. And then, is Shinryu considered an Elder Primal? So no, Elder Primals are specifically primals that are old. That's it. It's clarified, I think, in the Warring Triad quest somewhere. But an Icon or an Elder Dragon is literally just an old primal that's still around to this day. Mostly ones that came from the Allagan era, because the Allagan era produced a lot of primals that could be maintained throughout the ages. That's why you have the Warring Triad. They've literally been around for 5,000 years trapped in that. Bahamut, trapped in that thing for 5,000 years. Odin has been around since about that time as well. That's why they're Elder Primals. Whereas Shinryu is a legend, likely based on Midgardsormr, and thus was just summoned. So it's not an Elder Primal. In the same sense that the other ones are. Eden, same deal. Eden's been around for 100 years, so kind of. But Eden also wasn't summoned. Eden is just an obscene amount of light, basically using an Ascian as a body of ether to become this giant being. But it wasn't summoned either. It's not a primal in and of itself. So it is a Sin Eater, more specifically. Yeah, so you even make mention of that. So, yeah, it has nothing to do with... Elder Primal is literally just about how long that primal has maintained its form. And because the Allagans are the ones who allow that to happen, they pretty much all come from the Allagan era, I should say. So, yeah, that's why they're not considered Elder Primals, or Icons, even, in that case. At least not by the traditional sense. Let's see, is there anything else that I need to grab here? Let's see, what are your thoughts on what happened to XIVDB? I don't remember what happened to XIVDB. I think they ran into issues with leadership. I feel like somebody who was in charge of it was like not a good person. I don't remember, actually. I shouldn't even say things like this because I actually don't remember. It was either that or Square Enix changed something that just made it. Maybe they got a cease and desist. I don't know. You'll have to actually look it up because I don't remember what happened to them. And I'm just like grasping at straws here. There was someone who asked about making Blue Mage a more typical job. It's such a big question, but I don't think you can follow Final Fantasy XI's method of doing it. Final Fantasy XI's Blue Mage, very similar to Final Fantasy XIV's Blue Mage, just that game doesn't give a fuck about balance. So Blue Mages were always OP as hell. They're even more OP now. And I don't think that they should take a cue from... I don't almost think they should never take a cue from Final Fantasy XI, to be honest. Somebody asking about the new jobs not getting weapons in old Ultimates. I agree they should, but I don't think they will. I think they're way past doing that at this point. Then there's level design question. I hate Final Fantasy 3D. Yeah, okay. Please no more Final Fantasy 3 rants. Oh, you're going to be here for the long haul. Let me tell you. Listen, let me say something very clearly about this. This is a Q&A. Somebody asks me a question. I answer it. If that question happens to be, why do you not like Final Fantasy 3? And I go on a rant about it, well, that's kind of the point of the show. So, don't tell me what to do and what not to do. Because this never going to listen to that. Just letting you know right now. On that note, that's going to be the last question for this week's Q&A. So thank you for tuning in to this week's weekly Q&A for me. My brain doesn't work. Let me go make something. Be sure to ask a question for next week's episode in the comment section of the video below, and I'll see you for that video. Until then, y'all have a good one, and take care.